Hi, everybody. Michael DDA here. Thank you so much for joining me. We're in kind of a period that isn't in Torah at all. It has been left out. And what we did last week also. Let me give you kind of an overview, a big overview before we start. The last thing we talked about 2 weeks ago was Genesis 50, the last chapter of Genesis, in which 49, Jacob had died. It said in verse 1 of chapter 50 that Joseph fell on his father's face and wept. Well, this whole chapter for 21 verses, was all about Jacob being buried. All of Israel and Egypt went up. The men went up to Hebron. And when they got there, Esau created a problem. Well, in Torah, it doesn't talk about that at all. They got there, buried their father, and came back home. Easy peasy. But then at verse 22, look at what it says. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. Well, from the time that Joseph buried his father at 56, here it is, buried his father at 56, to the time he died was 54 years. What happened during those 54 years? And we're going to see that there's going to be a lot that's going to happen before Exodus 1. Exodus 1. There's going to be tons of things that are happening that are not talked about in Torah, that are talked about in Yasher. You know, I wonder if it comes down to those who win the wars create the history. They write the history. Is there a reason why? We talked about it last week. Esau was killed at the funeral. He tried to keep Jacob from being buried in Hebron, in the cave at Machpelah. Big brouhaha. One of Jacob's grandchildren, Cushim, cut off Esau's head. Torah says nothing about it. Then they chased Esau and Eliphaz, his son, Esau didn't go home. His head didn't go home. They carried his body home. Well, they chased him all the way to the border of Seir. And 3 days later, here we saw last week, that Esau, the east's seed, Seir and Seir's seed, all came down to Egypt. Here it is right here, 56 on the right. Came down to Egypt with 800,000 men. And Israel killed 600,000 of the 800,000 men. Israel and Jacob's Egypt. But again, Esau's not mentioned in Torah. Why is that? There's things going on here that we are unaware of. Well, when Esau got home, most of Seir's mighty men had perished in the battle. And Esau, really Eliphaz, because remember Esau's dead, but these are Esau's seed. Eliphaz, his eldest son, took it upon himself to work with, I believe, I don't know if it was, no, I take it back. He worked with Angias. Esau takes Seir with Angias' help. It was Seir and the children of the east fighting against Esau's seed, Eliphaz, and Angias, the king of Africa, who he had made allies with. And the king of Africa sent him 1,100 men, and then sent him an additional 400 or 500, maybe 600 men altogether. I think it was 600, but 200 of those men were killed. So 1,400 returned to Angias. Well, they wiped out Seir. No more Seir. Esau took it, made it theirs, took their women and their children, killed most of them. It says they kept, I forget how many boys alive, and young women became Esau's women. They made more of Esau's seed with them. Well, that was at 17 years. We'd have been in Egypt for 17 years. Notice on my chart here, I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to put it up at the top. It says, this is about Yocheved. I wrote this when I this is in my topic notes, Yocheved and Israel's timeline, because Yocheved was born when we went into Egypt. So if Egypt is 17 years old, we've been in Egypt for 17 years, she's 17 years old. Well, now, if you look here, when we've been in Egypt for 32 years, Jacob is 71. The Pharaoh that made him number 2 in Egypt died. And his son, Magron, became the new Pharaoh. Well, the last Pharaoh, Magron's father, told Magron to follow Joseph. So Joseph got to be leading in Egypt for an additional 40 years. Well, at 50 years old, we read this last week also. I'm sorry, at 89 for Joseph, 50 years old for us being in Egypt. There was another battle. This happened to be Esau's first king, Bela, son of Beor. Oh, that's so interesting. We're going to talk about Beor today. We talked about him a little bit last week. We'll talk about him again today. They came once again. They came with, who did they have? They had Angias, king of Africa. He was very supportive of him. Went all right with him the first time when he was buying Seir's seed. He thought, oh, I'll do it again. Yeah, Esau's seed is working pretty well with us. We made some money. Well, so they had Angias, king of Africa, and his people. We had the east seed. We had Ishmael's seed. And we had Esau's seed come to Egypt to free the captives, Zepho, Ben Eliphaz, Ben Esau, who had been captive from our 17th year in Egypt to our 50th year in Egypt. So what would that be? 33 years. He's already been captive 33 years. Well, we went out with 600 men. 600 men of there were some Egyptians that went with us, but it was primarily Israel that went out and fought 800,000 men with 600 men. 1,200 to 1, or maybe 1,100 to 1, somewhere in that area, to 1 odds. And we drove them away. They fled for their life because we killed 200,000. We killed a quarter of the 800,000 that came against us. Israel didn't have anybody who died. Oh, that's kind of where we're at right now. And so I want to pick up with Yasher 59 is where we're at today. And we're going to move pretty fast, but I want us to see these things. I want us to see what happened during this very silent period of time that is totally missing in Torah. Why is it missing? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. I think it has to do with who writes the Bible, who writes the history, who owns the publishing companies. There's more to the story than we know. 59. And these are the names of Israel's seed, who dwelt in Egypt, who had come with Jacob. All Jacob's seed came unto Egypt, every man with his household. We're talking about men. We see that Jacob had 12 sons and a daughter. I think he had more than 12 children or 13 children. Dinah is mentioned. Why? Because she was raped at Shechem. So they mention her. Sarah, an adopted son of a daughter of one of the sons, we'll see in just a second, she's mentioned. Why? Because I think it was her song that comforted Jacob when he found out that Joseph was alive. See, women are not mentioned in Torah unless they're going to do something that is significant and they want to let you know where they came from. Otherwise, we're talking about men. Seed. Seed begets seed begets seed. These are the seed of Jacob. So now we're talking about, it says seed of Leah. This is not to say that women have seed. No, women are bone of their man's bone and flesh of their man's flesh. Their seed is Jacob's seed. So they're just saying which woman gave the seed that was Jacob's. Don't confuse it. She had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sons. And look what it says. And their sister, Dinah. We're talking about the seed. And their sister, Dinah. She's not the seed. She's an additional woman that they're going to mention. Well, we had Rachel. She had 2 sons. Zilpah, 2 sons. Bilhah, 2 sons. And these were their offspring that were born unto them in the land of Canaan before they came onto Egypt with their father Jacob. Again, we're talking about men, seed, multiple generations. This is the grandsons that we're talking about. Reuben had 3. Simeon had 5. Oh, I take it back. 6, because he had 1. Remember, Simeon married Dinah. Dinah, gave Simeon these 5 sons, and it was Dinah's servant. Her name was Abuna, who came from Shechem, who was a concubine of Simeon, who gave him Saul. Levi. Very interesting, This is the kinds of things that you see in Yasher that you don't see in Torah. Look what it says. And Levi's seed were Gershom, Kohath, Merari, and their sister Jochebed, who was born unto them in their going down to Egypt. She was born in Egypt. This is why this is so important, and this is why I put together the note that we were just looking at a moment ago. Let me close this. Then it talks about Judah. He had 5 sons, but 2 of them died. Jehovah killed 2 of them. Then he had the other sons. These 2 sons, Perez and Zerah, came from Tamar. And Shelah was a Canaanite woman that he had taken. So then we have, and it says, Ur and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez, another name is some great-grandsons, still seed. They're all seed. They're all seed. They're all men. They all came from Jacob's loins. His Yorak, the soft part of man's body, between his legs. Some may call it his balls. Issachar, 1, 2, 3, 4. Zebulun, 1, 2, 3. And Dan had Cushim. Remember, Cushim was the deaf and dumb young man. I don't know if he was that young. We don't know how young he was. Who cut off Esau's head. Then Naphtali, 4. Gad, 6. Asher, here's Asher, 1, 2, 3, 4. And their sister Sarah. This is the one who was adopted. This Asher married a widow. She gave him these 4 sons, and Beriah had another couple sons himself, which were Jacob's grandsons. Again, Jacob's seed. Benjamin, we know he had 2 wives and 10 sons. Joseph had Manasseh and Ephraim. You know, there had to be other children, sons and daughters, I would think, that came from Joseph also. Again, we don't know it because women are not listed. And once Ephraim and Manasseh are mentioned, because why? They are the birthright, double portion. Manasseh and Ephraim took Joseph's one place in Israel and became each one of their own tribes. So we got a double portion. All the souls that went from Jacob's Yorak. This is what we were talking about, his loins, were 70 souls. These are they who came with Jacob, with their father, unto Egypt to dwell there. And Joseph and all his brethren dwelt securely in Egypt. And they ate the best of Egypt all the days of the life of Joseph. This is foreshadowing that Joseph is about to die. Well, look at the next verse. And Joseph lived in the land of Egypt for 93 years, 17 to 110. And Joseph reigned over Egypt 80 years, from 30 to 110 years. And when the days of Joseph drew nigh that he should die, he sent and called for his brethren and all his father's household. And they all came together and sat before him. His brethren, these are the 12 sons, 11 sons, and all of his household. I think these are the sons' sons, probably, that are coming to him, because we're going to see that the ladies came later, just like they did with Jacob. And sat, and it says households, and they all came together and sat before him. And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto the whole of his father's household, their seed, behold, I die. And Elohim will surely visit you and bring you up from this land to the land which he swore to your fathers to give unto them. I think this is foreshadowing Moses right here. He didn't say it as bluntly as Jacob did, because he called Moses a prophet who's going to come up. And Joseph made Israel's seed swear for their seed. Remember, we're talking about the whole of the father's household. After them, saying, Elohim will surely visit you, and you shall bring my bones with you from here. And it came to pass after this that Joseph died in that year, the 71st year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. And Joseph was 110 years old when he died in the land of Egypt. And all his brethren and all his servants rose up, and they embalmed Joseph, as was the custom. And his brethren and all Egypt mourned for him 70 days. Remember, it's 40 days for the embalming process and 70 days for the mourning process. And they put Joseph in a coffin with spices and all sorts of perfume. And they buried him by the side of the river. That is Sihor. This Sihor, I think it's actually Shihor, appears to be the Nile. And his sons and all his brethren and the whole of his father's house, his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, his brethren, all the 11 brothers, and the whole of his father's household, that's the grandchildren, made 7-day mourning for him. And it came to pass, after the death of Joseph, all the Egyptians began in those days to rule over Israel's seed. So now the trouble is beginning. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who reigned in his father's stead, took all the laws of Egypt and conducted the whole government of Egypt under his counsel, not Joseph's. And he reigned securely over his people. Well, now we're going to have a change of venue. We're going to talk about Eliphaz for a bit. And actually, this is going to go on for quite a long time. I left some of this out. I felt like it was taking too much time and it didn't have a lot of relevancy. So forgive me for that. If you want to read it, you can read it in Yasher. By the way, if you go to my website, just look for the book of Yasher. It might say Jasher. Look for that, and you'll find a link to this very document that I'm going through right now. It's always being updated, so it's being updated on my site as well. And when the year came round, being the 72nd year, this is the year after Joseph died, the 72nd year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. You know, I think it's interesting that when we had Abraham, we were measuring time with Abraham's life. In the 99th year of Abraham, Isaac was born. And then we had measured time in terms of Isaac. And then we measured times in terms of Jacob. And then Joseph. And when Jacob came to Egypt, we started measuring time in times of us, Israel, being in Egypt. I think that's very interesting. It helps us kind of follow the timeline. You know, you got to relate one with another. Here a little, there a little. Line upon line, precept on a precept. Here a little, there. That's how you put it together. That's how you figure out these timelines and make them work so that we understand exactly how long we were in Egypt. All right. When the year came round, being the 72nd year from the Israelites going down to Egypt, after the death of Joseph, Zepho, Ben Eliphaz, son of Ben Esau, fled from Egypt, he and his men, and they all went away. Remember when the funeral, Israel was their 17th year. Now this is their 72nd year. From the 17th year to the 72nd year, Zepho has been held captive. 41 years he has been captive in Egypt. Look where he goes. And he came to Africa, which is Nineveh, to Angias, king of Africa. And Gaius received them with great honor, and he made Zepho captain of the host. How did he even know Zepho? He worked with Eliphaz when they fought Sair. He worked with Eliphaz, maybe even Bela, when they fought Egypt and took that huge losing a quarter of their men. That was not a good experience for the king of Africa and Gaius. And Gaius received them with honor and made Zepho captain of the host. Esau's seed is now influential in Africa. We're going to see today that Esau's seed is going to become influential in Rome. Oh, that's very interesting. And he came to Africa, which is Dinamah, to Angias, king of Africa. And Angias received him with great honor. He made Zepho captain of the host, kind of second in command. And Zepho found favor in the sight of Angias and in the sight of his people. And Zepho was captain of the host of Angias, king of Africa, for many days. And Zepho enticed Angias, king of Africa, to collect all his army and go to fight with the Egyptians and with Jacob's seed, to avenge on them the cause of his brethren. Plus, he was kept captive in Egypt for 41 years. But Angias would not listen to Zepho to do this thing, for Angias knew the strength of Jacob's seed. Remember, he went down to Africa, or went down to Egypt to fight, and he lost big. And what they had done to his army in their warfare with Esau's seed. And Zepho was in those days very great in the sight of Angias and in the sight of his people. And he continually enticed them to make war against Egypt, but they would not. Well, this next section is going to talk about Kittim. It's going to talk about a beautiful woman whose name is Janeas, who is being vied for between somebody in, well, the king of Africa, Angias, and one other person, I forget who it was. Angias, and he requests I don't remember. Oh, here, Turnus, the king of Turnus. They both wanted this woman, Janeas. Angias got her. So we're going to skip down to the end of this chapter and pick it up here. This is now talking, we were just talking about Esau. Now we're going back to Joseph. And it came to pass at that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, commanded all his people to make for him, not Joseph. Joseph is dead right at this point. We're going back to Israel. And it came to pass at that time, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, commanded his people to make for him a strong place in Egypt. And he also commanded Jacob's seed to assist the Egyptians in building. And the Egyptians made a beautiful and elegant palace for his royal habitation. And he dwelt therein, and he renewed his government, and he reigned securely. Well, now the brothers are going to start to die. And Zebulun, Jacob's son, I guess we would say Zebulun ben Jacob, died in that year, in the 72nd year of the going down of the Israelites to Egypt. And Zebulun died at 14 years old. And he was put in a coffin and given into the hands of his sons. You know what? I'm going to pick this up a little bit with just the highlights. They're all going to say exactly the same thing. And the time going down to Egypt, given into the hands of his sons. And then 75th, remember 71, Joseph died. 72, we had that thing going on with Esau. 74, 72nd. Oh, that's the 72nd year also that Zebulun died. So now we're up to 75th year. And now Simeon's going to pass. 120 years old. Now, same year. Going back to Zepho. They're trying to keep these in chronological order so we can kind of keep track of what's going on. So now back to Zepho. Remember, Zepho is with Angias. And Zepho, ben Eliphaz, ben Esau, captain of the host of Angias, king of Denebah, was still daily enticing Angias to prepare for battle to fight Jacob's seed in Egypt. And Angias was unwilling to do this thing, for his servants had related to him all the might of Jacob's seed and what they had done unto them in the battle with Esau's seed. And Zepho was in those days enticing Angias to fight Jacob's seed. In those days. That's a little redundant. In those days. And after some time, Angias hearkened to the words of Zepho and consented to him to fight Jacob's seed in Egypt. And Angias got all of his people in order, a people numerous as the sand, which is upon the seashore. And he formed his resolution to go to Egypt to battle. You know, every time they say as the sands of the sea, it's usually right around 800 to 1 million people. Just something that I've seen. Well, now look what it says. And amongst the servants of Angias was a young 15-year-old, Balaam, son of Beor, was his name. And the youth was very wise and understood the art of witchcraft. This is Balaam, son of Beor. Well, look at my note. I said, can this be the Balaam mentioned in Numbers? It seems to be. I'll tell you right now, it isn't. This wasn't, I'm learning. I'm constantly learning. Now, I've known what I'm going to tell you for a long time. I just haven't changed this note. But let me read you the note. Whoops, it's this one. He's 15 years old in his 75th year that we dwelt in Egypt. And we dwelt there 210 years. He has to be 150 when Moses leads Israel out of Egypt. See, this doesn't work. But this is what it looked like to me at the beginning. Let me show you something that I wrote. This is an article that I put together. It's called Balaam, Ben Beor, Ben Janeas, Ben Balaam, Ben Beor. Oh, boy, I'll tell you, it takes some research to find out what's going on. The Balaam that we're going to see in Numbers is this Balaam right here that I've got my cursor on, born in Egypt. He's the son of Beor, who's also born in Egypt, who moved to Pethor. He's the son of Janeas, who's the son of Balaam, who had two sons, Janeas and Jambres. They're mentioned in the Torah. And Balaam is the one we're talking about right now, who's 15 years old. And it was his brother, Balaam, or Bela, Ben Beor, who was the first king of Edom, Esau's seed. And both he and Balaam are the sons of Beor, who is only mentioned as the Syrian. I think he was a Syrian who came to Dinebah to assist the king of Dinebah. You know, he's doing exactly what all these guys have done, especially Balaam, especially both Balaams. They're following, they go with the flow. Wherever the advantage is for them, if they're on one side and the other, and that side loses, they go to the winning side. And they start teaching them and prophesying for them. So Balaam, ben Beor, ben Janeas, ben Balaam, ben Beor. Well, this is the Balaam ben Beor, but this is also a Balaam ben Beor. You see how it gets so confusing? You gotta follow it and see how all these fit together. It's very exciting. It's like going on an adventure in Torah, decoding Torah. Oh, I love it. Well, let me switch this off here, and we're going to go back. Erroneous notes. You know what? I think I'll do this. Can this be the same as it seems to be? The answer is no. Whoops. No. And we are going to put this Control V, which is the link to the thing I just sent you. I knew I was going to be coming here today, so I just saved it. And now we know who this Balaam is. Very interesting. Okay, close this. Witchcraft, does that seem wise? Very wise, and understood the art of witchcraft. I'm not sure that seems wise to me. And then Gaius said to Balaam, conjure for us, I pray thee, with the witchcraft, that we may know who will prevail in this battle. You know, the Beors, remember, he's Balaam ben Beor. We had Balaam ben Beor, who went to be king of Esau. These Beors hold weight in these lands. Here's a 15-year-old boy going to give the king of Africa, before he sends and commits troops, the sands of the sands of the sea, that many troops, to fight in Egypt. This boy has weight. And Balaam ordered that they should bring him wax. And he made thereof the likeness of chariots and horsemen, representing the army of Angias and the army of Egypt. And he put them in a cunningly prepared waters that he had for this purpose. And he took his hand and took in his hand boughs of myrtle trees, and he exercised his cunning, and he joined them over the water. And there appeared unto him in the water the resembling of the images of the host of Angias, falling before the resembling images of the Egyptians and Jacob's seed. You're going to lose, king. And Balaam told this thing to Angias. Angias despaired and did not arm himself to go down to Egypt to battle. And he remained in his city. And Zepho ben Eliphaz saw that Angias despaired of going forth to battle with the Egyptians. No, and when? Zepho fled from Angias, from Africa, and he went and came unto Kittim. Kittim is Rome. Took us a while to figure that out, but we figured it out. And the people of Kittim received him with great honor. Wherever he goes, he receives great honor. Honestly, I think he's a deep stater. Let me just say that for right now, and we'll talk about that more later. And they hired him to fight in their battles in all the days. And Zepho became exceedingly rich in those days. And the troops of the king of Africa, Janeas, still spread themselves in those days. And Kitim's seed assembled and went to the Mount Kuptiza to account for Janeas, king of Africa's troops, who were advancing upon them. Apparently, Janeas every year raided Kitim for whatever wealth they could find there. You know what? Let me pull up a map because I think it's helpful for us. Just take me a second. I hope you don't mind. I think it's important that we understand where Kitim is and where the king of Africa is probably at. We'll just take a second for my map to open. I use Bible Mapper. It's also on my website as a helpful tool. I would encourage you all to download it. It's been such a help to me. I have a file that I use regularly that I update as I use it. And if I take this is Goshen right here. If I take this and go to 10, we're going to go over here to Africa. We're just going along the border. Here is where I think the king of Africa is. Now, if we look here, in fact, I may even go to, well, I guess this is all right. You recognize Italy by the boot. Here's the Tiber. Kitim is on the Tiber. That's why we know it's Rome. Sicily, Sardinia, Tuscany, Corsica. Tuscany is up in this area. But the king of Africa is here. So he's taking his boats every year and raiding Italy. Italia is what they call it, Italia. I wanted you to see what we're talking about. I think it helps to kind of put it, visually see it. The troops of Janeas, king of Africa's troops, who were advancing upon them. And it was one day that Zepho lost a young heifer. Listen, this is Zepho lost a young heifer. Does it make sense that somebody as important as Zepho is looking for a lost cattle, heifer? And he went to seek it, and he heard it lowing round about the mountain. And Zepho went, and he saw, and behold, there was a large cave at the bottom of the mountain. You know, we've had DUMBs, D-U-M-B, deep underground military bases, for 50 years in the United States. They've been around for a long time, probably even more than 50 years, probably closer to 75 years. He's finding a cave at the bottom of a mountain. And there was a great stone there at the entrance of the cave. And Zepho split the stone. He had to split a stone to be able to get into the cave. How did the cow get into the cave? And he came into the cave, and he looked, and behold, a large animal was devouring the ox. The ox is the cattle that he went to, the heifer that he went to. From the middle upward, it resembled a man. From the middle downward, it resembled an animal. What do you call that? I forget what you call those kinds of creatures. But this is a deep state creature. Remember, the sons of Elohim, the fallen angels, came to the daughters of men and they created things. This is still them, I think, creating the abominations that they create. They're doing it even now. We're seeing those things in the news. Well, alternative news anyway. But it was Zepho who saw this. And I don't know if you remember, there was another time where a son of Esau, maybe it was a grandson, I think it was a grandson, who was out with some sheep and found a bunch of creatures that looked just like these guys. So this is the second time in Yasher that we're seeing these kinds of creatures. You know, my inclination when I first read it 15 years ago was to ignore it. I didn't know what to do with it. But now we're starting to see these creatures, and much worse, coming out of the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, who were tunnels long before that, created by these creatures, I think fallen angels. Many will say it is aliens. I guess fallen angels could be aliens. They're alien to us, aren't they? In the earth. Well, and it says, and the inhabitants of the team heard of this thing, and they rejoiced exceedingly. And they said, what shall we do with the man who has slain this animal that devoured our cattle? You know, some people are thrilled with the idea, but I wonder if Esau discovered something that he's not going to be talking to anybody about right now. Remember, this is Esau seed in Rome, the same place that the Catholic Church is going to be raised up with their DUMBs. And they all assembled to consecrate one day in the year to him. And they called the name, therefore, Zepho, after his name, Happy Zepho. And they brought unto him drink offerings year after year on that day. And they brought unto him gifts. At that time, Janeas, the daughter of Uzzah, wife of King Angias, became ill. Remember, I told you, Angias got the girl. And her illness was heavily felt by Angias and his officers. And Angias said unto his wise men, what shall I do to Janeas, and how shall I heal her from her illness? And the wise men said to him, because of the air of our country is not like the air of the land of Kittim, Rome, Italy. And our water is not like their water. Therefore, from this has the queen become ill. For through the change of the air and the water, she became ill. And also because of her country, in her country, she drank only the water which came from Perma. I don't know where that is. It might be a spring or something, which her ancestors had brought up with bridges. They brought, Rome has many aqueducts. This is what we're talking about, aqueducts. Rome has many aqueducts, and her ancestors brought these waters from Perma with these aqueducts, the bridges. And Gaius commanded his servants, and they brought unto him in vessels of the water of Perma, belonging to Kittim, and they weighed the waters with all the waters of the land of Africa, and they found those waters lighter than the waters of Africa. Did they have more minerals? How much water do you have to weigh to be able to tell the difference between the waters? And then Gaius saw this thing, and he commanded all his officers to assemble the hewers of stone to assemble the hewers of stone in thousands and tens of thousands of hewers of stone. And they hewed stone without number. And the builders came, and they built an exceedingly strong bridge, an aqueduct. And they conveyed the spring of water from the land of Kittim unto Africa. Can you imagine the feat? What's the word that I'm looking for? Design feat. Here, look, I mean, we're talking a long, long ways. Here is my map. Here is, even if they took it from here, are they going to bring it all the way from here? Look, this is the distance. This is Rome. Of course, they're coming from the headwaters. That's 376 miles. If they took it from here and came down to Sicily, they could easily get across from I mean, there's a bridge right now from the toe of Italy to Sicily. I've been over it myself. But even if it came from this distance, the shortest distance, we're still talking almost 100 miles that they would have to bring this water. And they got to continue going downhill. Now, this wouldn't work very well if the earth was round, would it? No, it wouldn't. But if it's flat and you're starting from something very high, the place where these waters are originating from, maybe they could make it work. Well, an exceedingly strong aqueduct, they said bridge, and they conveyed the spring of water from the land of Kittim unto Africa. And those waters were for Janeas, the queen, and for all her concerns to drink from, to bake, wash and bathe, therefore, therewith, and also to water therewith all seeds from which food can be obtained, and all fruit of the ground. And the king commanded that they should bring of the soil of Kittim, Rome's soil, in large ships. And they also brought stones to build with therein, build therewith. And the builders built places for Janeas, palaces for Janeas, the queen. And the queen became healed of her illness, just being able to get the stuff back. And at the revolution of the year, the troops of Africa continued coming to the land of Kittim to plunder it as usual. And Zepho ben Eliphaz heard their report, and he gave orders concerning them and fought with them, and they fled from before him, and he delivered the land of Kittim from them. He chased Africa out of Italy. And Kittim's seed saw the valor of Zepho, and Kittim's seed resolved that they made Zepho king over them. So now he's going to be the king. This is Esau. Esau's seed is becoming the king of Kittim, Rome. And he became king over them. And whilst he reigned, they went to subdue Tubal and all the surrounding islands. Do you remember Tubal? Have you ever watched the story of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers? It's a musical. Tubal is who they're talking about. And it makes me wonder, in the movie, the boys were reading the story, this very story. That's where they got the idea to go and take their women. Those sobbing women, they keep on sobbing. I don't know if you remember the story. I love that musical. Well, and their king, Zepho, went at their head and made war with Tubal and the islands, and they subdued them. And when they returned from battle, they renewed his government for him, and they built for him a very large palace for his royal habitation and seat. And they made a large throne for him. For Zepho reigned over the whole land of Gittim, over the land of Italy, 50 years. Well, now the brothers are continuing to die. Again, I'm going to be short in this. 79th year. So remember, the last brother that died was in the 74th or 75th year. Then we had this thing with Zepho. Now we're going back to the brothers. 4 years later. Reuben's going to die. He's 125 years old. His coffin was given into the hands of his seed. 80th year, Dan's going to die, 120 years of age. Again, given into his seed. Here's Cusham. Now we're going back to Esau. Again, they're trying to keep us in order, chronological order. And in that year died Cusham. What year was that? Same year, 80th year of us being in Egypt. Cusham is going to die. And after him reigned Hadad ben Bedad. Hadad ben Bedad for 35 years. And in the 81st year, Issachar ben Jacob is going to die at 122 years. All the brothers are starting to pass. 82nd year, Yasher dies, 123. 83rd year, Gad's going to die at 125 years old. 84th year, the 50th year, and it came to pass in the 84th year, that is the 50th year of, the reign of Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom, that Hadad assembled all the children of Esau. Look at that, you guys! What happened between Joseph dying and Exodus 1? Here's one thing that's really important. This is Esau. Again, he's going to attack. Oh, no, I take it back. He's going to attack Moab. Another aggressor. And it came to pass in the 84th year, in the 15th year of the reign of Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom, that Hadad assembled the Esau seed, and he got his whole army in readiness, about 400,000 men. He's got quite a large group. And he directed his way to the land of Moab. And he went to fight with Moab and to make them tributary to him. Expansionists. And Moab's seed heard this thing, and they were very afraid. And they sent to Midian's seed to assist them in fighting with Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom. And Hadad came unto the land of Moab, and Moab and Midian's seed went out to meet him. And they placed themselves in battle array against him in the field of Moab. And Hadad, you know what? Let's talk about where Moab is at. I think that's advantageous for us also. Let me go back to 5 here. And we're going to go back to Israel. This should be adequate. Let's go to 30. Nope, too much. Let's go to 10. Okay. Still got to go further. 30. Okay. This is Seir. Remember, it isn't Seir anymore. It's Edom. And on this side of the brook of Zerad, all the way up to here is Moab and Ammon. remember, Moab and Ammon, the Moabites and the Ammonites, came from Lot. They all fit together. Esau, remember, is Jacob's son. Midian is probably going to be out in this area. The land of Oz would be my guess. But there, Midian are going to fight Esau's seed. It's in the plain of Moab. Where's the plain of Moab? I don't know. It's got to be in this area someplace. Okay. I'm speculating. I know where Moab is. There's got to be a plain there. So, it says, and Hadad fought with Moab and there fell of Moab's seed and Midian's seed many slain ones, about 200,000 men. They killed a lot of people. And the battle was very severe upon Moab. And when Moab's seed saw that the battle was severe upon them, they weakened their hands and turned their backs and left Midian seed to carry on the battle. Midian's seed came to help them. And when the battle got rough, they left and let Midian's seed die. And Midian's seed knew not the intentions of Moab, but they strengthened themselves in the battle and fought with Hadad ben Bedad, and all his hosts, and all Midian fell before him. Well, all the Midian that came out to fight. He killed every one of them. And Hadad smote all Midian with a heavy smiting, and he slew them with the edge of the sword. He left none remaining of those who came to assist Moab. And when Midian had perished in the battle, Moab's seed had escaped. Hadad made all Moab at that time tributary to him. He got what he wanted. And they came under his hand, and they gave a yearly tax as it was ordered. And Hadad turned and went back to his land. Then at the revolution of the year, remember we're talking about the 84th year, maybe this is now the 85th year, at the revolution of the year, when the rest of Midian's people that were in the land heard that all their brethren had fallen in battle with Hadad for the sake of Moab, because Moab's seed had turned their backs in battle and left Midian to fight. Then 5 of the princes of Midian resolved with the rest of their brethren who remained in their land to fight with Moab and to avenge the cause of their brethren. So now now Midian's going to come and fight Moab. Look what it says. And Midian's seed sent to all their brethren, this is Keturah's seed, and all their brethren, and all Keturah's seed came to assist them in the fight with Moab. Midian is a son of Keturah. So now all the children of the east who are Keturah's seed, they're going to come and fight. So now Moab is in trouble. And Moab's seed heard this thing, and they were greatly afraid. And all the east seed had assembled together against them to battle. And Moab's seed sent a memorial, a letter, a missive, to the land of Edom, to Hadad ben Bedad, saying, come now unto us. Remember, Moab is tributary to Esau. So now Esau's seed, Hadad ben Bedad, has some responsibility to take care of them. Come now unto us and assist us, and we will smite Midian. For they all assembled together and have come against us with their brethren, the east seed, to battle, to avenge the cause of Midian that fell in the battle. And Hadad ben Bedad, king of Edom, went forth with his whole army and went to the land of Moab to fight with Midian. They're fighting together now. They were enemies. Now they're fighting together. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Midian And the east seed fought with Moab in the field of Moab. And the battle was very fierce between them. And Hadad smote Midian's seed and the east seed with the edge of the sword. He beat them all. And Hadad at that time delivered Moab from the hand of Midian. And those that remained of Midian, and the east seed fled from before Hadad and his army, and Hadad pursued them to their land and smote them with a very heavy slaughter. And the slain fell in the road. And Hadad delivered Moab from the hand of Midian, for all Midian's seed had fallen by the edge of the sword, and Hadad turned and went back to his land. And from that day, Midian's seed hated Moab's seed, because they had fallen in battle for their sake. And there was a great and mighty enmity between them all the days. And all that were found in Midian in the road of the land of Moab perished by the sword of Moab. And all that were found in Moab in the road of the land of Midian perished by the sword of Midian. Thus did Midian unto Moab, and Moab unto Midian for many days. And it came to pass, now we're going back, and it came to pass in the 86th year that Judah died. He was 129 years old at his death. He's the oldest one so far. He lived to be 129 years. But look at, here's Naphtali. And in the 89th year died Naphtali. He was 132 years old. And it came to pass in the 91st year of the Israelites going down. This was in 89th year. So now is the 91st year of the Israelites going down to Egypt. In the 30th year of Zephel. I think Zephel reigned for 35 years. No, we're talking about Zephel. Zephel reigned in Rome for 50 years, it said. In the 13th year of the reign of Zephel, Ben Eliphaz, Ben Esau, over Katim's seed, Africa's seed, came to Katim to plunder them as usual. But they had not come upon them for 13 years. So this is the 13th year of the reign of Zephel. From the time that Zephel took over, they hadn't come. So now 13 years, they're coming. And they came to them in that year. And Zephel ben Eliphaz went out to them with some of the men and smote them desperately. And Africa's troops fled from before Zephel, and the slain fell before him, and Zephel and his men pursued them, going on and smiting them until they came near to Africa. Must have been near to the boats, I guess. And Gaius, king of Africa, heard the thing which Zephel had done, and it vexed him exceedingly. And Gaius was afraid of Zephel all the days. And this is where we're going to stop today. The next time we get together, we're going to start Exodus. I've got some introductions that I want to give on Exodus before we actually get started reading just these 14 verses. We're now up to the 14th verse. There's one son of Jacob left, Levi. Levi's going to live to be 137 years old. Interesting. All right. Well, we're going to stop here. You guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.